July 2024, Boston. In the penthouse on the 45th floor of the Clarendon, a luxury high-rise condominium in the Back Bay district, Melissa Thompson was quietly holding a yoga pose as the morning sun streamed in. Outside the window, the sparkling waters of the Charles River shimmered through the morning mist. At 35, Melissa touched the pearl necklace at her throat, as she often did. It was a precious piece she had bought herself 10 years ago to celebrate her first promotion. Tall and stylish, she had built a successful career as a senior manager at McKinley & Partners, earning $300,000 annually. However, her success had only widened the rift with her family. "Miss, please review your schedule for today," came the voice of James, her butler. Melissa finished her deep breathing as Bach's well-tempered clavier played through the living room sound system. "Thank you, James." While donning her white linen pantsuit, Melissa reviewed her day's agenda. She had an interview scheduled with the local business paper. She had been selected as one of their 40 under 40 business leaders. Meanwhile, in a mansion in Brookline, Melissa's mother Patricia was already perfectly coiffed and made up, dressed in a new Chanel tweed suit. As a prominent figure in Boston's social circles, she wielded considerable influence in charitable activities. "Sophie, wake up. The reporter will be here soon." Patricia knocked on her daughter's second-floor bedroom door. Sophie lived a glamorous life as a vice president at an investment bank. "I know, Mom." Sophie, with her model-like appearance, checked her smartphone while changing into the latest Prada dress. An article about her sister Melissa caught her eye, and her face twisted with displeasure. "Her again." In the study, George, Melissa and Sophie's father, was quietly reading the newspaper. With his salt and pepper crew cut and expensive suit, he cut an impressive figure as the founder and CEO of Thompson Realty. Though mild-mannered, he often turned a blind eye to family discord. "Is everything ready for Thompson Realty's shareholders meeting?" At his wife's voice, George nodded slowly. He owned 80% of the company's shares, with the remaining 20% distributed among family members. However, the details of this distribution had only deepened family tensions. The family gathered at the breakfast table, but Melissa was notably absent. "That girl never shows her face anymore," Patricia remarked. "She must be busy with work," George responded. Sophie sipped her tea and muttered, "We're busy too." Just then, George's smartphone vibrated. The screen showed Melissa, but he didn't answer. The summer sun poured into the departure lobby of Boston Logan International Airport. Through the international terminal's large glass windows, rows of aircraft could be seen on the runway. Inside the air-conditioned building, early morning travelers bustled about. It was the Thompson Realty 40th anniversary trip to Nice. As the 10 a.m. meeting time approached, luxury cars pulled up one after another at the terminal. Patricia was the first to appear, gracefully stepping out of a Rolls-Royce as the driver held the door. She wore a new Hermès resort dress and created shade with a large straw hat. In her hand was the latest Louis Vuitton travel bag. "It's so hot," she said, adjusting her luxury sunglasses. Following her was her daughter Sophie, dressed in a white Prada resort dress and wearing oversized Gucci sunglasses. Her model-like height and perfect figure drew many glances. First class, right? Of course, darling. The two headed to the first-class exclusive lounge in the arrival lobby. They sat in luxury leather sofas, sipping champagne while waiting for the rest of the family. Melissa appeared next. Stepping out of a taxi, she wore a white Armani linen pantsuit with her signature pearl necklace. Rolling her Louis Vuitton carry-on case quietly, she entered the lobby with a cool expression. Her presence as a senior manager at McKinley & Partners drew many glances, but she didn't head to the lounge where her mother and sister waited. Instead, she quietly ordered coffee at a cafe. George was the last to arrive. Stepping out of a Bentley with a cashmere jacket draped over his arm and smartphone in hand, he arrived while handling an urgent company call. Sorry about that. Sudden call from a shareholder. The four headed to the check-in counter. An experienced-looking female flight attendant stood at the first-class exclusive counter. With a perfect smile, she began checking passports and tickets. The process went smoothly until Melissa's turn, when the attendant's expression changed. I'm sorry, but I can't seem to find a reservation for Ms. Melissa Thompson. Silence fell. What do you mean? Melissa's calm voice rang out. Patricia turned around with a malicious smile. Oh, we didn't book a ticket for you. After all, you're not really family. Sophie's mocking declaration carried to the ears of nearby passengers. At that moment, a young airport employee secretly began filming the scene with their smartphone. George could only look down in silence. A heavy atmosphere settled over the lobby. Other passengers in line at the check-in counter began to notice this unusual scene. The discord within this luxury brand-clad family was being quietly exposed. Melissa slowly touched her pearl necklace, the precious piece she had bought herself, not from her mother. In her eyes floated deep sadness rather than anger. That's right, she said, her voice surprisingly calm. I'm not a member of your family. Those words seemed to echo throughout the entire airport lobby. Melissa quietly adjusted her grip on her carry-on case. I have my own life now. As she walked away confidently, the sheen of luxury brands gleamed on her back. Behind her remained her stunned mother and sister, and her father, still looking down. The young airport employee continued filming with their smartphone. Outside, a hot wind caressed Melissa's cheek. The sound of her high heels echoed sharply in the morning airport. Her smartphone began vibrating. The screen displayed incoming calls from family members one after another. However, she quietly tucked it away in her bag. Through the taxi window, as she left the airport, she could see the nicebound plane about to begin boarding on the runway. Melissa never looked back. Like releasing the weight of 35 years, she began walking a new path. In the employee break room at Logan International Airport, 24-year-old flight attendant assistant Jenny Martinez's hands were shaking. Her smartphone contained the video she had filmed 2 hours ago. Her colleague Kevin looked on worriedly. Are you sure you should post it? Did you see how they acted? Someone needs to speak up. Jenny steeled her resolve and pressed the upload button. Corporate chairman's family's disgrace, real succession. She carefully typed the title. 15 minutes after posting, the view count had already exceeded 5,000. And an hour later, that number continued to rise at an astonishing rate. In the first-class cabin of JAL Flight 010 to Honolulu, Patricia Thompson's iPhone wouldn't stop vibrating. In the next seat, Sophie was also frantically operating her smartphone. Her Instagram DMs had suddenly begun overflowing with messages. "Mom, this is terrible." Sophie's voice trembled. The flight attendant's request to switch to airplane mode fell on deaf ears. The view count had surpassed 250,000, with over 8,000 comments and 12,000 shares. "George, do something." Patricia's voice rose in panic. But George only heaved a deep sigh. Boston media outlets began competing to break the news. Veteran Boston Globe reporter Mike Sullivan was typing rapidly. Eldest daughter of real estate tycoon George Thompson excluded? Truth behind viral video. Questions arise about Thompson Realty's corporate governance. In the 44th floor boardroom at Thompson Realty headquarters, an emergency crisis management team was sweating. PR team leader Sarah Wilson reported the situation. Regarding current social media impact, Thompson family is trending #1 nationwide on Twitter. Video views on TikTok have exceeded 1.5 million. There are over 20,000 related posts on Instagram, and critical comments from industry professionals are flooding LinkedIn. Meanwhile, in her Clarendon penthouse in Back Bay, Melissa stood by the window, continuing to reject all incoming calls. Butler James quietly reported, "Miss, we've received interview requests from over 20 media outlets, including the Boston Business Journal editor-in-chief, Forbes, Wall Street Journal, and NBC affiliates." "Thank you, James. I won't be seeing anyone today." Melissa's voice maintained remarkable composure. Messages kept arriving on her smartphone. "Call immediately. The company is in crisis. Delete the video. My future is ruined." The video spread at an exponential rate with various interpretations. On Twitter, comments like, "This is typical toxic parenting," and "Is this indicative of Thompson Realty's corporate culture?" danced across screens, while on TikTok, young people reposted with various effects and comments, even beginning to create parody videos. Even after arriving in Nice, Patricia and Sophie remained holed up in their suite, emptying the minibar. With makeup smeared, Sophie mumbled, "Our lives." George was on the balcony of a separate room, overwhelmed with responding to business partners and shareholders. Monday's stock price plunge seemed inevitable. Late that night, Charles Winston visited the Clarendon penthouse. He was both Thompson Realty's legal counsel and a friend of 40 years. "Thank you for coming." Melissa welcomed him. "Sit down, Melissa." Charles's voice carried deep understanding. "Let's talk about your rights and what comes next." In the penthouse overlooking Boston's glittering nightscape, Charles spread out important documents: Thompson Realty's articles of incorporation, shareholder agreements, historical board meeting minutes, and George's trust agreement. "Your father made his decision 20 years ago." Charles pointed to an old contract. Just then, Melissa's smartphone vibrated. The screen displayed an urgent message from a Thompson Realty board, a request for a board meeting. A strong light appeared in Melissa's eyes. "I'm ready." She touched her pearl necklace. The moon shone beyond the Charles River. Early Sunday morning, McKinley and Partners' office was silent. Melissa faced Charles Winston in her 45th floor office in the Prudential Tower. "First, we need to engage PR specialists." Charles spread out materials showing profiles of global PR firms. "I can introduce you to the managing director at Weber Shandwick." "Please do." Melissa nodded while continuing to take notes on her laptop. Her experience at McKinley and Partners was proving to be a powerful asset. Just then, she received a call from butler James. "Miss, the Wall Street Journal's Boston Bureau has requested an urgent interview. They want to publish their independent findings regarding Thompson Realty's shareholding ratios. I'll meet with them." This time, Melissa agreed on her own. That afternoon, in a private dining room at the Boston Harbor Hotel. Facing Wall Street Journal veteran reporter Janet Stevens, Melissa quietly began speaking. "Let me tell you about Thompson Realty's shareholding structure." She spread out the prepared materials. 20 years ago, my father made an important decision." The next morning, a shocking article appeared on WSJ's website. "Thompson Realty, the truth behind a hidden succession plan." Founder set up trust for eldest daughter 20 years ago. Supposedly excluded successor actually the largest beneficiary. The article sent shockwaves through the industry. Contrary to expectations, Thompson Realty's stock price began to surge. Investors saw new possibilities. A tense atmosphere pervaded the heavy boardroom as Thompson Realty held an emergency board meeting. Today's agenda is the consideration of new management structure. Charles Winston quietly began the meeting. "First, we'll hear Melissa Thompson's proposal." Melissa stood up, wearing a navy Chanel suit. Her pearl necklace gleamed in the morning light. "Allow me to explain my proposal for the new management structure." The projector displayed detailed reform plans. This reform will evolve Thompson Realty into a truly global corporation. Deep silence fell over the boardroom. Then, the most senior outside director spoke. "An excellent proposal. I support it." One by one, voices of support rose. George Thompson silently watched his daughter. Pride shone in his eyes. That evening, a new article appeared on the Boston Globe's website. Melissa Thompson to become new CEO of Thompson Realty. Stock market responds positively, share price continues to rise. High expectations for new management structure. Meanwhile, in Nice, Patricia and Sophie stared at the news with anguished expressions. "How?" Sophie's voice trembled. "Our plans." Just then, an email arrived in their hotel room. The sender was Thompson Realty's legal department. Subject: immediate repayment demand for borrowed funds. The blood drained from Sophie's face. The truth about her shadow investments using the company's name was about to come to light. A few days later, an envelope arrived at McKinley and Partners' office. Inside was a handwritten letter from her father. Dear Melissa, 20 years ago, I saw in you the qualities of a true leader. Please forgive me for not being able to speak of it. My excessive leniency toward your mother and sister led to this situation. That is my responsibility. However, you have shown strength beyond my expectations. I want to entrust Thompson Realty's future to you. To my beloved daughter, from Father. Melissa quietly folded the letter. Outside the window, early summer sunlight illuminated Boston's streets. At Thompson Realty headquarters, a new nameplate was attached to the CEO's office door, Melissa Thompson, Chief Executive Officer. Miss, preparations for the press announcement are complete. Butler James announced. Thank you. She stood up and adjusted her suit collar. Her pearl necklace gleamed in the setting sun. Melissa stepped into the elevator. There was no trace of hesitation left. Over 100 media representatives packed the first-floor press room. Camera flashes lit up as she walked in with dignity. Thank you all for gathering here today. Her voice quietly rang out. I would like to tell you about Thompson Realty's new challenges. July 2025, Boston was once again wrapped in midsummer sunshine. From the window of the CEO's office on the 50th floor of Thompson Realty headquarters, a different view spread out from a year ago. On Melissa Thompson's desk lay the latest issue of Forbes. Next to her cover photo was the headline, Transforming a Real Estate Empire, a New Era Begins with Generational Change. Miss, the second quarter financial reports have arrived. Butler James quietly opened the door and entered, carrying thick files. Melissa smiled as she accepted them. 1 year since her appointment, Thompson Realty's stock price had risen 80%. New projects were succeeding one after another, and employee average salaries had increased by 15%. Just then, her smartphone vibrated. Another regular call from her mother. However, the screen quietly returned to sleep mode. The TV screen showed news from a small town in New Hampshire. Social elite turns housewife read the caption as Patricia Thompson appeared on screen. She was filmed leaving a local supermarket, wearing simple everyday clothes instead of luxury brands. Her expression no longer held its former dignity. On another channel, economic news. Under the headline, Former investment bank VP indicted for securities law violations, Sophie Thompson's name appeared in small text. The full extent of her shadow investments had come to light, and she had lost her job and been ordered to pay massive compensation. Ms. Thompson, it's time for your lecture at Harvard Business School. Her secretary announced the schedule. Melissa stood up and picked up her briefcase. The lecture topic was The Future of Family Business, Governance and Generational Change. Her experience was already beginning to appear in new business school textbooks. Before stepping into the elevator, she glanced at the framed letter from her father. George Thompson was said to be living a quiet, retired life in his Florida villa. In the car driving along the Charles River, she touched her pearl necklace. She no longer needed her family's approval. This necklace had become proof of her own life. Over 500 students had gathered in the Harvard Business School auditorium. Among them were many young people about to leave their family homes and begin walking their own paths. Standing at the podium, Melissa quietly began to speak. Some of you may have seen my story on social media. The story of a woman abandoned by her family at the airport, who turned that moment into an opportunity to transform her company. The auditorium fell silent. But today, I want to tell you what happened next. What true success means. What family means. And what it means to live authentically as yourself. As the campus prepared for the fall semester, a fresh breeze was blowing. After finishing her lecture, Melissa asked her driver to stop on her way back to the Clarendon penthouse. Standing by the Charles River, she took a deep breath. Her family, whom she had bid farewell to at the airport a year ago, were now living completely different lives. Her smartphone vibrated again. This time from an unknown number. The area code was from New Hampshire. It must be her mother's new number. But Melissa no longer had any doubts in her heart. She quietly tucked her smartphone into her bag and gazed at Boston's twilight cityscape. The high-rises gleamed in the setting sun, and the Charles River's surface was dyed crimson. In this city, she had found her true self. And she had also found a new family, her colleagues at the company, board members who shared her vision, and most importantly, her bond with herself. Back at the Clarendon, Melissa stood by the penthouse window and quietly asked her butler James, "Is everything ready for tomorrow's board meeting?" "Yes, Mississippi. All materials for the new projects are prepared." She smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. This time, not to seek anyone's approval, but for her own convictions. Outside the window, Boston's night lights began to twinkle. They seemed to shine in harmony with the brilliance of her new life.